It is now my pleasure to introduce a man whose lectures are always liberating and his lectures are never oppressive, Dr. Joseph Kicklighter.
Gosh, I was scared there for a minute. Yeah. Because I want to liberate, not oppress. But I might as well already tell you that I've got some sad news. We're going to be without Frank and Linda next week. So, yeah, I am already sort of in the grieving process. So, yeah, it'll just be worse by next week. I don't know how. Sherry, you got to help me. You're going to be my support system, okay? So I don't fall apart, okay? Because you'll be the liberator if I get.
Rather than the incinerator.
Yeah, exactly. But he'll be back. They will return, just like General MacArthur, I promise. Yeah. Speaking of Austria, you see, I've got our map. Austria, Italy, and last but not least, by no means least, Czechoslovakia. So in the next 2 weeks, those will be major stops for us. But all of us, of course, well, most of us, and maybe all of us, have had the opportunities of enjoying the beauties and wonders of Austria in movies. And who could forget Sound of Music, filmed on location, as I was told by the tour guides. Yeah, oh yes. And the rest of that area. We don't have to get into how Austria was separate from the rest of Germany. That will be in another course, believe me, at another time. Centuries earlier. But we know, of course, that the Austria that existed at this particular time was a very young country, like so much of the post-World War I world. It had been created as a result of the defeat of Austria-Hungary. And while it could not, by the terms of the victors, be united with Greater Germany, it had to exist alone as a small country with the great city of Vienna surrounded by all that beautiful area, which some of you have seen, including, of course, Salzburg. Obviously, the Italians had great interest in the independence and territorial integrity of Austria for its own sake. As I said to you in a previous class, Austria was almost like a junior buddy of the Italians. And I meant that in a way condescending, but in a way you just understand Austria is hardly a major power despite the greatness of Vienna, which is almost significant enough to be its own place. Well, at this point, we're going to Austria to understand indeed how it existed between Germany, Italy in the 1930s. We've already seen the unrest. We've already seen how the Catholic leaders tend to take over the country, rule it, put socialist left-wing groups out of the picture, not really be a quote-unquote democratic republic. We let that go, but it is the Depression. So maybe we can somehow understand that Austria, Vienna, being such a great financial center, there were terrible economic problems, and the schemes of leftist groups were unsatisfactory to the Catholic elites. In any event, the Nazis had great interest in Austria because, of course, the leader of the Nazis, Adolf Hitler, was an Austrian. That's a good way to start things, because we're now going to see, well, I find this a rather strange illustration, but I thought I would share it. I don't know why he chose that particular outfit. You may recognize him, Franz von Papen, who was, in fact, a German Catholic leader who was sort of affiliated with Nazis, but because he kept himself not associated with some of the worst war crimes, he had to serve some years, but he lived in obscurity and wrote his memoirs after the war. He was, I would say, a major player in the early years of Hitler's regime. And you see, at this particular time, having survived the Night of the Long Knives and other events, he must have been a very good politician, good in quotation marks. We see him here leaving for what would have been, I guess, a fairly significant trip back then. I guess what they used to call aeroplanes. And just look at that, and he is in his outfit, I guess, to go for a hike. He is there with his assistant, his wife, and his chief of staff's wife. And one assumes that this is their own private plane from Berlin to Vienna. Now, I would think that would be not a very long trip nowadays, but then I think you could count on a lengthy expedition. In any event, the reason he was going, and you'll notice the date, right there in the middle to late 30s, he is going there to be German ambassador to Austria, because he has all kinds of connections. I'm Catholic, you're Catholic, and we are really, really concerned about you. And we have certain issues that we want to deal with. And you understand those issues that are going on. And of course, we understand the particular concern with Germany and Austria. Now, by 1938, clearly Germany had violated the World War I treaty so much that here is just another clear example of what's going on. By the way, I thought it was interesting that both men have on those black armbands, which I associate with FDR when his mother died. You remember seeing those photographs? She didn't die until 1941, Sarah Roosevelt, and he always had that black armband. Just a little point of perhaps this is the way that men back in the day.
You repeat it. When anybody dies, you wear a black one.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was wondering if if this was a member of von Papen's family or something of the sort. But I just remember President Roosevelt in the photographs during the war. Okay. Here he is. He's the man. And do you know he lived until 1977? He sure did. Must have been living right. He basically lived in St. Louis. He became a professor. Well, I know, see. He decided to move to the United States. He became a naturalized American citizen until 1967. Then he moved back home. Loved Austria. We love the Alps, right? So he lived in retirement for 10 years. He was a lawyer, obviously coming from, I think it's fair to say, an upper class family. He fought in the Austro-Hungarian army. Ironically, he had been captured by the Italians, which I find in 1915. All of this is to say he had an interesting past, but after the assassination of Dollfuss in 1934, remember, on the couch, he then became the leader of government. There were other figures, but he's the one we think of. And his purpose in 1935 and onward, of course, is to protect Austria from a takeover and at the same time maintain good relations with Germany and Italy. You know, you got these big neighbors, and he is very, very concerned about that. So this is a very big deal. And it's not to say that everybody in Austria loved him. Oh, I am sure that many did not love him. If you were a Nazi or had Nazi tendencies, you didn't like him. If you were a socialist or communist, you didn't like him. So there are lots and lots of groups who were anti-Schuschnigg. But I'm assuming that with his friendship with the Italians, as had Dollfuss before him, that he was able to maintain himself. However, 1937, it's like, you remember that old song, The Thrill Is Gone? I think when he gets to Rome, sometimes he's talking to Il Duce and thinking, where is our love gone? I'm just quoting all these old songs, but you get the idea. I know, the mystery, the mystique of Austro-Italian amore. And it's, you don't seem to care as much, Benito. Why not? I mean, yeah, that hurts. But we sense that, and you say, wasn't there some dating going on between the Germans and the Italians? You betcha. Yeah, that axis. And we didn't include you. No, it's not a threesome. It's a twosome. So what does that mean for you? Well, oh, close up. Yeah. He tried every idea he could. He would have interviews with Hitler. Oh, I should say Hitler had interviews with him. But it was always the idea, what can we Austrians do to show we're Germans too, but we want to have our own country. So can't we work this out? I mean, that's diplomacy. I mean, right? You have this, we have that. Let's work together here. You know, we're all German culture and we love you. And, you know, it's like not so much about the Nazis. There's no copy of Mein Kampf in von Schuschnigg's library. So we understand that, and that may be part of the problem for this particular group of Austrians. Or maybe there was no solution other than the Anschluss, the merger of Austria with Germany, because he tried everything. And that is von Schuschnigg, as they would talk at the beautiful mountain retreat of Hitler. He would come up with every idea possible. Can't we just say, what are those shirts that people used to wear with the big heart Germany or something like that? Is it something, anything? And the ultimate, of course, which I think made Hitler right now, was the idea of having the plebiscite. We'll just see. If y'all want to be part of Germany, we'll check that vote. Well, that really created tension. So that was pretty much the sign that talk was finished. March of 1938, then, I think it's fair to say that von Schuschnigg was out of a job. Yeah, it was like, there was no question about that. He was already beginning to lose it. And at this point, he became essentially a prisoner of the Germans, and he would remain so during the war, concentration camp, in fact. That's why I think it's so remarkable that he would live on till 1977 and be a professor of government in St. Louis and naturalized American citizen. He had quite a life. So very interesting indeed. Any event, he's finished up here. No question there. Okay. Now, obviously, Germans, especially the Austrian Nazi Party, arranged a big welcome for the German troops. This was not at all as if people were saying these are terrible events for Austria. I thought it was interesting, not only the scene, if you can see it, and it may not be clear, these folks are along ropes and they are being held back by Vienna police. But if you were not of the groups that were pro-German, I suspect you were staying home or you were trying to get away if you could, because even though we don't know what the future will bring, we understand, I think, pretty clearly that those who were not disposed towards the Anschluss are going to find this unpleasant. And they did indeed. They were Jewish folks or socialists, communists, whatnot, who did not get out. By this point, a man that we will see who died in 1946, not surprisingly, very brilliant attorney, I'll give him that, Seyss-Inquart, becomes head of the Austrian government, but this is basically just to, coordinate, because he went on to his infamous career for which he died in Poland. So, he was involved with that. And so this is one of, I have to believe, Hitler's greatest days. We actually have, from the testimony at the Nuremberg war trials, evidence from one German general who said that Hitler's ambassador in Rome had told him, and this got Hitler just beyond babbling and excited, that Mussolini sent his greetings and thought it was a great day for Germany. And this is just like, bone for a dog. I mean, it's like, oh, tell Mussolini, I'll never forget this. And whenever, it's sort of like the kind of things you would say when you get married. I love you forever. I know I'll never be anybody else. You're the one, you're the only, you're my everything. I'm sorry, another song. I can't help it. But the idea over and over again is this idea of this eternal connection. And I will say this, for whatever horrible things that would justly be said, you have to say stuck with him. And believe you me, it wasn't always pretty, was it? But there was definitely that sense, because Mussolini would not make a move to assist these Austrians, because basically it was a fait accompli. Now, how did the British and French feel? I think the word would be awkward. I don't think they knew what to do exactly. They say, you know what you Germans are? Naughty. Yeah. And you shouldn't have done that. I know those of you who have children, you probably said, now that was bad. You might have to have a timeout. I don't know what they're going to, I mean, they're not in the League of Nations anymore. So we're going to cut you off. Yeah, you're going to be sorry you did that. I mean, Austria was a member of the League of Nations. I know. That's kind of weird, isn't it? Gosh, I guess the office of the Austrians in Geneva closed. You won't be needing that anymore, will you? Because, of course, all that's part of Germany now. So, yes, to rent, former country spaces are now available. Yeah, it seems very weird to me that there is no Austria. Now, again, I would remind you all of the empire that many of us will remember somewhat fondly, the Habsburg Empire and Hungary and all that, it's gone. But the modern day Austria, I'll call it, the Austria of 1919, 1918, now that's gone. It's coming back from that near you, 1945, 46. It will go into a neutral state during the rest of the Cold War, just to get a little ahead of the story, and to understand that it has a very unique situation. And there is no question, I would assume, that Austria, when its independence was restored, was ever going to be part of a future Germany. That's just my speculation. But it was more or less neutralized by the partnership of the West and the communists. So that's the way it happened after the war.
The Russians occupied Vienna for a while.
Oh, yes, they certainly did. Then that.
All four.
Yeah, like Berlin, quite right.
Four.
Mhm.
And then Austria became it.
That's right. And then whatever, the Austrian sentiment was, and we suspect it was pro-Western, my editorial there. Okay. Here he is, the villain. I don't know if he was really a Nazi at that point. He was probably, I guess, what you describe nowadays as a far right Austrian politician who saw this as a way. There were Nazis in Austria, but they were a minority. There were various right-wing groups. And he saw like the face of the future. This is the way it's going to be. And Hitler kind of liked him. And so he was one of those that Hitler insisted become in the cabinet of Schuschnigg. You know, I told you how Schuschnigg would try to please Hitler in a way and say, you'll just let us be independent. Well, this is like inviting some old snake to come live with you, right? I mean, this guy is not good, not a nice person. And that's why he was hanged, right? So but that's how he got where he was, which was very high up. Then he took it over. So he's on the Austrian radio now, and I imagine he is announcing that now we can become part of the German fatherland, et cetera, et cetera. So this is all in the early spring of 1938. So, like I say, we just don't know what to think about Anschluss if we are British, because I don't think anybody was seriously thinking, well, we're just going to go in there and straighten it out. Well, who's going to do it? British or French or Italians, or say, no, let's do it. And then you think, what's the league going to do about it? Since Germany's not a member, it's rather difficult to say, you're a naughty member, we're going to punish you. I mean, we did that to the Soviet Union later on, but right now, it's like, I think there's always that sense of we're just going to let it be. I remember reading one particular individual said, well, it's sort of in their backyard, so, and they do speak German, so let's just let it go and just let bygones be bygones. And remember, not so long ago, they had the Anglo-German Naval Agreement. Let's just hope we keep having nice relations. Remember, there were lots of Anglo-German marriages in the upper classes. We're trying to make this work. Well, of course, the French are next door neighbors to the Germans. That is not to say the word neighbor is not necessarily the same thing as friend. Some you will understand that. Many of you love your neighbors. Now, I think that's very nice for you. But you understand that isn't always true. But I think we have already understood that Franco-German relations are tenuous. And in this case, while the French are very concerned about what happened to Austria, the French are not in a position to do anything about it. What is it they used to say, you know, bullies put up or shut up? That's part of the problem with the French. The French aren't going to do anything without the British. And the British aren't going to do anything. So neither are the French, right? I mean, it's like, you know, we think you're bad. May we? Very bad. But, hey, British friends, y'all want to do anything? No? No, here too. So, that's the truth. I mean, that's how it was in Paris. Now, I might add, we love Brussels. Brussels is a lovely city, and you NATO fans, you can go there to their sanctuary. Yeah. But we help support it. Tax dollars go to NATO. Yeah, let's not forget. So, speaking of Brussels, what's coming out of Brussels? Something hurtful. Because the Belgians decide, thought of another song, break it to me gently. I can imagine that they, in fact, went to Paris and said, you know how we had this mutual defense agreement? I said, we. And they said, let's just be friends. I mean, that hurts. You know, when you've been tied, maybe we need to see other people. I mean, it's just really amazing to think to me about how the Belgians decide for their own sake. I mean, diplomacy is all about self-interest, isn't it? So the Belgians decide it isn't going to be, it could be hazardous to their health to be in a Franco-German military, a Franco-Belgian military alliance. So they decide they will go into a state of neutrality. Well, that doesn't, not too good, but that's the way it was. So, as we are going to talk more and more about the relationship of France and Britain and how that would play in terms of Italy, we will find that that will be a very important factor. Now, it's not that the French aren't involved with this or interested in it, but they seem basically tied to their relationship with the British, which may have been a mistake because the British are not sure what they want to do. Now, the Italians essentially see that their services for Franco are no longer needed. And so basically, they're out of there by the latter part of 1938, and victory is declared for the Franco forces in 1939. All of this is important because as the British are now going to recognize Franco's regime, yes, quickly, and they recognize the Italian authority in Ethiopia by declaring Victor Emmanuel as the Emperor of Ethiopia. You know, it's kind of an interesting little Hitlerian tidbit, I guess you would say. He found all of that Italian king business absurd. He never, he had to dine with the king when he came to Italy, because he thought all of that was utter nonsense, because he was basically, he liked to be the big stuff, because he wanted to probably have pasta with Mussolini, and he had to go with the king. And that's what American, not to compare our leaders with Hitler, but I'm just saying that the idea you understand of Italian kings can make it hard on individuals who are not from monarchies. In any event, the strategy of the British will be to try to do something with Mussolini. I guess you'd say they want to play keep away. And that is very, very difficult because this friendship of Mussolini and Hitler is a tough nut to crack. But the British want to do it. And how do they want to do it? They go to the opera. Yes. Yes. Now, I know curious minds want to know. And so I went to great lengths to find out the name of the opera they went to. There is no thing that I would not, no matter how long it takes, no mountain is too high for me. Are you dying? I know. Okay. To abate your fierce curiosity, it was Falstaff by Verdi. Yes, I guess Count Chano, he's the one on the end. And you just see how happy he is. He is, of course, Il Duce's son-in-law. He could not stand the British. He just thought they were wretched. He said, how dare these horrible rich people come over here? They're so unworthy for the land of Francis Drake. They were real men, the British of the 16th century, and now these bourgeois merchants. He just didn't think much of Lord Halifax. As far as Il Duce, he's already, looks like he's taking a nap, doesn't he? I would, yes, I would probably make him do some extra work if he did that in my class. Anyway, you see, and there they are, and that's what they were doing there, because other than having to go see Falstaff, they were there, I guess, to have some good food and talk about Anglo-Italian relations, and you know how we care about you. I'm going a little out of my time period because this is 1939, but it's very early indeed. And it's like never say never, I guess, in terms of trying to break up the French and the Italians, because Chamberlain is so concerned about the possibility that maybe we, the British, and our French friends and the Italians will be able to form a special relationship and prevent Germany from going any further. You say, well, maybe we could send a note of concern and love to Moscow. No, I don't think with Neville Chamberlain's name on it. Or Lord Halifax. Boy, he was a big fellow, wasn't he? Makes everybody seem kind of smaller, although Chamberlain is not any short person either. But there they are, and it was not successful. Let's just put that. I hope the performance was good. It's always wonderful to be in Rome. I'm sure everybody had a good time with that. But it was in the Roman Opera House where they saw it, and it's interesting. And again, I am sure the Italians were like, God, I can't wait till these people leave. You know, I don't think it was happy or they had a real good time. But that's what you do in diplomacy. You put yourself through these things. Okay. So, as we speak about motives and the like, we understand that you just can't satisfy Germany without something drastic. And what will do that, no one really knows. Because in the spring of 1938, it appeared, or at least according to Hitler, his list of goals had been satisfied from the external point of view. Suddenly, people would find out that wasn't true. Now they will know. Chamberlain. I want to talk about him a little bit because many know, and I just found this out myself the other day. A friend was telling me he had seen Chamberlain's tomb in Westminster Abbey, and I have never seen that. Seen Isaac Newton, but I've never seen Neville Chamberlain. But indeed, he was buried there. And that would have been, as some of you know, 1941 when he died. Bowel cancer. I mean, sounds like a terrible way to go. So he must have been a very sick man during his term. A lot of people are not aware, of course, of Chamberlain family history, that both his father and older brothers were both leaders of the British government. So Neville Chamberlain came to his career not only as being the mayor of industrial Birmingham, but as the younger half brother of Joseph Chamberlain, or rather Austin Chamberlain, Sir Austin Chamberlain, excuse me, and the father Joseph Chamberlain, who in Queen Victoria's day, Edward VII that time. All of this is to say that he had had a great career. I think he had been in charge of the Exchequer during Stanley Baldwin before, the conservatives. And these were people who were not, Comintern, no heart t-shirts for Neville Chamberlain, because, these are strict conservatives. So not interested in having a détente with the Russians or any of that. But what he did know was he did not want Britain or the British people to experience anything like the Great War again. And this will seem to be a big factor. And of course, the understanding that we can negotiate any difference, even with the devil, that is the idea. It was said that during the 3 airplane flights he made to Germany at the age of 69, he had never been on an airplane before. That's right. You just don't think about things like that, that back then it was quite exciting for him. There he is with his brolly, as they say. And we saw the German ambassador going to Vienna. Could you imagine the 3 planes? And they were not, London to Germany now. Delta's ready when you are. And you just don't think about, they used to have nice meals. Yeah. Those were the days. But it's over. We understand it didn't happen. Maybe it will for you. But business class. Yeah. Okay. But Mr. Chamberlain, maybe they gave him something nice on his trip, but I'm sure that this was hazardous and difficult as he went to Germany 3 times to try to deal with what will be a growing crisis. And he will last in authority until the spring of 1940, dying, of course, a bit later. But there were, of course, people who opposed him. Oh, yes, we all recognize those two. Okay, I know there are people, huh?
He needs a better.
You think? I think a gym membership maybe, but that's just, whoa, Lord, that thing will barely go around.
Used to fit.
Yes, you think at one point and just keep going, take a deep breath, Sir Winston. But anyway, after the crown, they said some pretty nasty things about Anthony Eden. And that hurt me a lot, but I've tried to, my therapist and I'm trying to work it out, but because, I mean, look at him, he's so nice. And yeah, he was a very close associate of Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill wrote a beautiful letter, which I read, to Mrs. Chamberlain after Neville Chamberlain's death. So there are many interesting things to say. But one thing we can definitely say is they did not approve of Chamberlain's policies towards Germany. No question about it. And it was so strong that Anthony Eden actually made a decision that could have cost him his career. And that was done in early 1938. He and Neville Chamberlain, that is, Anthony Eden, was foreign minister. Remember my big tall fella who was there at the opera? Well, he wasn't there then. That would have been Anthony Eden. And Chamberlain was, saying, oh, Lucia, we could do this. We want to work with you. And we think so much of Italy and blah, blah, blah. I think after one of those sessions, Anthony Eden says, I'm out of here. That's the end. And this, of course, is a very major event. That would have been probably February of 38. He is out. Now, he's still in the same political party, but he is no longer part of Chamberlain's government. I think they called them the backbenchers. They are the conservatives, or I guess in the other case, the labor rights, who they're technically in the same party, but they tend to be troublemakers. I mean, they're so opposed. And this would be true of our friend with the Taylor issue and his friend Anthony Eden, because of course, they, I assume, aspired for a tough British policy, which Chamberlain and his group thought would endanger peace. And he had some agreement, I'm not saying support, but agreement from people of the Labor Party. And you say, oh, pink, huh? Oh, yeah. By the way, do you remember, I think it was last month, when George or Angela Lansbury passed on. And her grandfather was the famous George Lansbury of the 1930s, who was a major British labor leader at this time. I just thought that was fascinating to think about that he had those connections. But they were definitely, while I wouldn't say they were communists, they definitely were anti-war. So, didn't like Hitler, didn't like Mussolini, don't like fascists, but they don't like war talk either. So that's a very difficult position to be in. I think you would agree, And they don't like Neville Chamberlain, Lord knows. And I don't think they like Winston Churchill either. I mean, it's like they have their own thing, but they are anti-war. So I would not think that these people like Anthony Eden and Winston Churchill are exactly carrying a majority of people. Many of you are aware that the students in the Oxford Union voted not to go to sign up to fight in a war. I mean, the feeling of pacifism was very strong. I mean, it's like, oh gosh, 20, 30 years ago, somebody said to me, do you think we go into war? I said, do you realize how long it's been since it's been a draft? 1973? Doubt it. So it's like conditions in Britain are changing, but not for these people. At least Chamberlain and his group, and many of you may know of that group, like Nancy Astor, for example, the American who was the first woman in Parliament. Yeah, Lady Astor. I mean, it's like they entertain these people, and know that from Boyle's War, that series that I'm so fond of. I mean, yes, there were people who might have been sympathetic with the Germans, but in general, I would think after just 20 years, there were still plenty of people who thought they had no business getting involved in another major war. When you see all the people who died or all the people who are disabled. But all of that is to say, on we go with new suits, new fittings, and enjoy a great wardrobe. Now, put it in red so we could really emphasize it, because of course we want to talk about Czechoslovakia. Exactly. Frank would tell you, well, he's right here.
Right.
So he could tell us Czechoslovakia is in the heart of Europe. It's right there.
Hitler thought so too.
Yes. Not that, yes. But like Austria, Czechoslovakia was a newbie. Yes, way back when it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And I do like to remind my Czech friends about that. I'm sure they knew that already, but this is just a pleasant nudge.
Willing to forget about it.
Okay, but I'm not. So let's just remember that as it did become a country, there were all kinds of hopes and expectations for the people who lived there, like these great Czech patriots that I talked about earlier, like Beneš and Nasrik and people of that sort, who saw the future in Central Europe in what became known as, oh, I always love this, the Switzerland of Central Europe, because the idea was all these people could live together and in peace and harmony. I know the irony of it, right? It is. However, you always say if it hadn't been for the Depression, maybe it would have worked. I don't know. These ethnicities, they have their issues, and they still do. So it doesn't really end in that way. However, you will recall that before our time period, 1935, the French had finally done what nobody thought they would ever do. and that is reach out to the Soviets and say, in effect, we would like to be your ally. And then, would you be interested in helping Czechoslovakia in case it had any enemies? And the Soviets say, we would like that, but now, this is Litvinov, our friend who lived in England and was married to an English woman. He said to the Soviets, that is to say, the French, we would go first, and then you would join in. And so there is agreement. Basically, we would help against the Germans. We would help the Czechs. This is in 1935. I don't know how serious either side was, but that's diplomacy. The idea is, and then of course the Czechs say, yeah, we'll sign too. Where can we sign? We'll sign, we'll protect you all too. Yeah, that's right. Sure you will. I mean, it's like everybody wants to sign up. Well, not everybody. I don't think the British are too interested. They said, well, that's jolly good, hip, hip, hooray, and all that. The British are not going to be involved, but it's clear Litvinov and the group that are basically dominating Soviet foreign policy on behalf of Stalin are saying collective security. But even by 1935, they seem to be concerned about the Germans returning to a major role in Europe. So, and some of you will think back before World War I and think, wait a minute, haven't we seen all this before? You betcha. Remember that Franco-Russian thing? Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Get them like that. Well, that's what we could call collective security. We're here for you, you're here for us. And it all sounds so warm and cozy. And then look, Hungary and Poland. We love Hungary and Poland, don't we? No, we don't love it. Sorry. I have to change my tune. Hungarians and Poles sometimes don't like Czechs. So when Czechs say, we probably need more agreements, Hungarians, Poles, we don't think so. We don't like you, so good luck. This then is a problem of the fact you can't please them all, especially the Soviet Union. Litvinov talks a good game, saying, we can all work this out. Let's all work together. I mean, the joining of the League of Nations, and he'll be welcome to Geneva, Litvinov, and all of this, but I don't think they're all going for it, especially people in Budapest and Warsaw. They are saying, we don't want to be part of you, because I'll tell you something, as we all know, you get too close to those folks in Moscow, they'll eat you up. And that's definitely the way these people felt. We just don't want to get too close to you. But I guess if I were a Czech, I want to be your friend. It's like everywhere they can get someone, they tried to, particularly the French and the Soviets, even though Soviets can sometimes be dangerous friends, very dangerous. So, but the British, well, I say, let's think this is a wonderful thing for you all, not for us. Oh, now we have our map. And you're saying, gosh, I've been there. Yes. And say, it all looks so familiar. Yes, it does. But this is the new name of Austria, Ostmark. Basically, the Eastern Division. That's the truth. Because it's no longer an independent state. Remember what I told you in Geneva? The offices are rented out at the League building. Not needed. So that's gone. And then, of course, look who's up for next. The various parts of Czechoslovakia. That's a very strange business, but I thought, oh, Innsbruck is nice, isn't it? All those different places. I mean, it was a beautiful area, and how many millions of people live there? It's quite a large country, or it was at that time, for the time. In any event, it's now part of Germany, which it had never been before. But don't worry, I'm not going to do a lecture on 19th century Germany and talk about all that, but it is interesting. But now, when we look at that area, and I know many of you love Prague.
Nice place.
Very nice place, expensive. Okay, yeah, you better come armed with cash money.
Cheaper than New York.
Okay. Okay, you got me. Now, and there, Frank, and lovely friends in Slovakia. That was ugly, but we'll let that go. We are all here united in brotherhood and fraternalism. Yeah. You're a Slav, I'm a Slav. So, Pan-Slavism?
Yeah, Pan-Slavic.
Okay.
Recession.
Okay. But we are supposed to be multi-ethnic, so many groups, kind of like New York, all of these different groups, but we can all live together as one. I didn't like that laugh. That's scary. But yes, we understand that it's not just Czechs and Slovaks. Oh gosh, we got Poles here, Hungarians, they, and you say, come on, the more the merrier. Well, again, could this be like a part of Manhattan? I don't know. It seemed like a good idea in 1919, but I think in the 1930s, it began to get a little uncomfortable, particularly in the western part. And of course, this is the part with ethnic German people named after the mountain range, the Sudetenlanders. They had never been in Germany proper, that is Bismarck's Germany. They had been part, like all these other folks, Austro-Hungarian Empire. But they're culturally German. That's their language and so forth. And this is like something out of the 1990s, which we all remember. The ethnic tensions that arise that possibly people would not have known about except thanks to the Great Depression and Nazis, I guess. The Sudetenland issues would now be very, very serious indeed. And how it would be serious, of course, would be the fact that they will be incited by Nazis. Now, how many Nazis were actually in the Sudetenland? That's a very interesting question. I'm sure that was just one of many right-wing groups who were stirring them up against the Czech government. There may have been Sudetenlanders who were actually in the government because the Sudetenland always claimed to be, or rather the Czech government always claimed to be inclusive. But they were not in, that is, the Sudetenlander Nazi movement was not into getting along. It was into separatism, as we would say today. So all of this means that German ethnics who lived in the Sudetenland, and I read that they were the majority, but not exclusively the population of the Sudetenland, but they were the majority. There were presumably non-German ethnics who lived in that area, people of Czech background, Slavic background. But the question is, during the Depression, how are they going to live together when there are issues of jobs and all the rest? And of course, the answer is not very well. It became much more serious, of course, because it was exacerbated. And that's why I use that word, because that's the only way I know to describe it, because the Nazis developed a strong Sudetenlander party dedicated to that area being taken by the Nazis. We should not have to live under Czech rule. And of course, the Czech reply is, but it's all about democracy. We want to share this with you. We're all part of the same state. Well, these folks don't see it that way. So, 1938, they're talking about autonomy for the Sudetenland, meaning, of course, take that area away from the, let me see if I can pull that back just to show you what a large area that is. Sometimes we forget how large an area that is, how many millions of people that would be. But it was a very large area. And what they are suggesting is, of course, that their future should be not in Czechoslovakia, but separate. But the Czechs say, This will, of course, come before the League of Nations. Remember our friend Benesh, he's right there, because he is not going to give up there. That is not, what is it they say now, not negotiable? You know how they always, yeah, well, that's what they say. This is not negotiable as far as the Sudetenland is concerned. And I think we could all understand that. They could see what happened to Austria. So as far as the Czechs are going on, because I'm sure they were in touch with the French and the Soviets, and they were, of course, very, very concerned about what might happen. So, when we're at loggerheads and we're in 1938, what do? We send in Lord Runciman. Yes, a jolly good move. Yes, Lord Runciman. You know that old Southern thing we like to say, well, bless his heart. Every time I see him, I think of that. He goes in there, Lord Runciman. Runciman came from a very prominent family, by the way, from up north, England, I mean. And they made lots of money. And ergo, Lord, don't want you to think anything about the nobility, but I mean, he was a lord. There he is with Benin. And you think, how did he get this job? Well, you could say he's lucky. His wife was actually a member of parliament. Little fun fact, you can throw this in at your parties this weekend. Guess what I know about the Runciman family? Oh, and his son was a medieval historian of the Crusades. But again, I don't want too much information can get you too excited. Just understand the Runcimans are very important people. How did he get this job? Because he liked to hunt. Hunt. Yes, that's right. In the Sudetenland, he used to go over there, and you think, what are they doing, deers or what kinds of things would they be doing? I don't know. But I do know he had lots of friends. And I don't mean regular folks either. The regular folks have to work. These people are all just going hunting. Okay. Stag here, stag there. And yeah, so that is how his big Czech connection was. I know you're thinking. So you mean he's not hanging out a lot in Prague? Not so much. His relationship is really with Sudetenland Germans going hunting. We're talking people with some serious Deutschmarks, okay? All right. So that's the way we understand it. And who is going to send him? Well, of course, it's Neville Chamberlain is sending Lord Runciman. So there they are. I don't know if this is one of these, like a big party and everybody's got their arms around each other. I don't think so. I think it's distant. How you doing? Good to have you. How are things in London? Pretty good. How are things in Prague? I get it's formal, and maybe Benin should hope somehow this would impress the British with the difficulties that the Czechs were having. And now we're ready. Can I do this now? Oh, I can. Okay.
The man who didn't ask for the job steps into the political whirlpool of Europe. In other words, Lord Runciman arrives in Prague. With him are Lady Runciman, his staff, and our good wishes for a happy ending to his almost superhuman task. Lord Runciman is to try and solve the differences between the Czechoslovaks and the Sudeten Germans. There may be a solution if everyone were reasonable. But who is reasonable these days? Lord Runciman we know, but what's one against 15 millions? But Czechoslovakia is the bulwark of democracy in Eastern Europe, so it is worth troubling about.
I thought it was interesting, if for no other reason, simply the great cause that the announcer seemed to be propagating. I mean, clearly this was not a neutral presentation, was it? At the movie theaters, he's going, go Lord Runciman and save our Czech friends. In any event, the idea of returning there to Prague, to the various areas, was not necessarily helpful to him, because Lord Runciman was, I definitely would think, above his pay grade in terms of dealing with the diplomacy. And certainly as far as the difficulties of the Sudetenland issue, the British were not at all prepared to deal with it. We seem to have lost it, but we lost it, but that's okay. But the idea of it, very weird, but the idea of the Runciman's, the idea of the Runciman Commission, it is to be borne in mind, because you can't say they weren't trying, but again, it's more like, well, what else is going to happen? Because there's not much give and take on the two sides. And I understand that. I mean, and you do too, is we're going in some very critical times, spring and summer of 1938. And so I guess this is a pretty good time. I think I'll just
Yeah, I don't know about what.
I think I can end now, and we'll just see you next week. And I'm sorry, but I'll see you next time, and we'll get right on with it. Thank y'all.
So how you want me to cut this? I'll cut it that ribbon from.
Yeah.
Okay, you gotta add anything to that? Yeah. Okay, so we'll kind of measure it. And I'll put